Welcome to a deep dive into history. Well, not your typical history lesson, though. We're on the hunt for those little intriguing nuggets from your sources. Get ready for some aha moments.
It's true. History is just full of surprising connections, isn't it? It's like solving a puzzle, we're going to find those missing pieces and see how it all fits together.
Right. Okay, so we're starting with A Short History of the World by H.G. Wells. I have to admit, it's always a little daunting, when someone tries to condense all of history into one book.
It's a tall order, for sure. But you know what I find fascinating about Wells? He makes even the most, complex historical events actually engaging. Like he throws in humor and even a little social commentary, which is pretty bold for a book published in 1922.
Oh yeah, totally. It does feel like he's just chatting with you, telling a story. And speaking of 1922, that's actually where his book ends, right after World War I. Makes you wonder how his perspective might have changed if he'd written it after, say, World War II, or even today, right?
Absolutely. It just reminds us that every historical account has its own context.
Yeah.
Wells was a known socialist, and you can definitely see that woven into his writing. In fact, his critique of traditional power structures, it was so strong that the Spanish translation banned by Franco's government in the 1940s.
Whoa, banned. That's saying something. It just goes to show how our view of the past is always changing, shaped by what's going on right now.
Exactly. What we consider normal now could have been seen as, radical or even dangerous back then.
Makes you think twice, right? It's so important to be open-minded and consider different perspectives when looking at history.
Absolutely. All right, get ready for a complete 180. We're going from a classic book to, well, the world of YouTube. Bill Wurtz's video, History of the Entire World, I guess.
Oh yeah, that video. It's like this super fast, condensed history lesson, but it works. I mean, going from the start of civilization to modern times in what, under 20 minutes?
Mm,
And with a catchy tune.
I know. It's history on fast forward, complete with stick figures and those little jokes that just make it stick in your head. Exactly. It just proves that you don't always have to be, super serious to learn about history. Wirtz manages to pack in so much information about different civilizations and major events, all while being really entertaining.
All right, ready for another turn? From fast-paced YouTube, we're going back to 17th century England with Sir Walter Raleigh and the history of the world.
Ah, Raleigh. Talk about a guy who lived a life, huh? Explorer, writer, imprisoned in the Tower of London not once, but twice.
You can't make that up. So what makes his take on history stand out?
Well, you have to remember his audience. Raleigh wrote this while imprisoned, and it was intended for one person, Prince Henry, the heir to the throne.
Wow, talk about pressure.
He-
So he wasn't just writing history, he was like giving the future king a leadership crash course.
Exactly. Raleigh truly believed history held valuable lessons, especially for those in power. He used all these historical examples to show the good and the bad consequences of leadership.
So it wasn't just a history book, it was like a how-to or maybe a how-not-to guide for ruling a kingdom. Okay, now I'm really interested. What kind of wisdom was he trying to give this young prince?
Well, Raleigh was a man of his time, right? The Elizabethan era. And they were really into this idea of the microcosm. Basically, they thought humanity was like a mini version of the entire universe.
So like a snow globe, but with people instead of snow.
Exactly. And just like you need that balance in a snow globe, the Elizabethans believed the universe needed order. And guess who was at the center of it all?
Let me guess. The king.
Bingo. They thought a good, virtuous ruler, king or queen, maintained that harmony, reflected the order of the cosmos.
Okay, so a bad ruler equals like bad vibes for everyone.
That's the idea. Raleigh was convinced that when a ruler messed up, it wasn't just a political problem, it messed with the whole cosmic balance. Led to chaos, conflict, even divine punishment, he thought.
Wow, no pressure or anything. It really raises the stakes, doesn't it?
For sure. And, Raleigh even uses Richard III as an example, calls him, get this, a master of mischief for taking the throne, possibly even killing his own nephews to get there.
Yeah, nicest guy ever isn't exactly how most people remember Richard III.
Exactly. And okay, maybe Raleigh's writing might sound a bit dramatic today, but it's fascinating. He's using these figures from the past to think about power, morality, leadership, things that are still so relevant.
Right. It makes you wonder if someday someone will be looking back at our leaders, writing about their successes and failures.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to happen. And who knows, maybe they'll even use these podcasts as primary sources.
Now that is a thought. Okay, before we go down that rabbit hole, we've got one more source to explore.
Right, the website you provided. It outlines all the major events in ancient history, starting right back at the beginning with those first civilizations.
Yeah, It's incredible to see it all laid out, from those early cities in Mesopotamia to empires rising and falling, writing developing, ideas spreading. It's really something.
It really is. The sheer scale of history, you know? It's amazing how resilient humans are, how inventive we've been to get this far.
It's almost too much to process sometimes. We've gone from ancient Sumer to the Tower of London, from socialist historians to stick figure animations. What kind of common threads have you noticed in all this?
That's what I love about these deep dives. Even when the sources are so different, you start to see patterns. One big thing that stands out, the power of innovation. Throughout history, it's incredible how much it's shaped everything.
It's true, from inventing fire, figuring out agriculture way back in those early civilizations, to using bronze, iron, the printing press, and everything that came after. Every new technology, it's like it caused this ripple effect, changing societies, even shifting who had power.
Totally. It reminds us that progress, it's not a straight line. It's those groundbreaking ideas, the inventions that shake things up, that really push humanity forward.
Makes you wonder, Brett, which innovations happening right now will be the big turning points looking back? What will future historians say were the most important events of our time?
It's such a good question. And speaking of patterns, there's another big one in history. Empires rise, they become powerful, but then they fall, and something new takes their place.
It's like this classic story, this struggle for power, and then the decline that always seems to follow. Can we ever escape that cycle, or is it just how humans are?
That's the million-dollar question, right? I don't know if there's an easy answer, but when we study history, at least we can try to understand the forces involved, the pressures from within, the conflicts with others, new ideas, new technologies. It all plays a part in these power shifts.
So we can't predict the future, but we can learn from the past. Maybe we can even handle these cycles a bit better.
Right. And that brings us to another really important thing we see today. Multiple perspectives matter. Wells, with his socialist views, Raleigh focusing on what makes a good king, even Wurtz with his, I don't know, more satirical but insightful take. It all matters.
It reminds us that history is never really objective. It's always told from someone's point of view.
Exactly. So we have to
Yes.
look for different voices, challenge our own assumptions, be open to different interpretations. It's just like that puzzle, you need all the pieces to get the full picture.
It's true. It really is like that, a huge puzzle. The more pieces we find, the bigger and more complicated it gets. And it makes you realize that history is not just dates and names. It's about understanding those forces, those ideas, the choices that led us to where we are now.
Exactly. It's powerful stuff. We can see connections, recognize patterns, learn from the best, and learn from the mistakes of, well, everyone who came before us.
Right. Like they say, if you forget the past, you're doomed to repeat it. We've covered so much ground, ancient times, all the way to the 20th century. If you go back to any point in history, just to observe for a day, where would it be?
Oh man, that's a tough one. So many choices. I think I'd go back to ancient Alexandria when it was at its peak, intellectually. Can you imagine just walking through the Library of Alexandria, surrounded by all those scrolls, all those scholars from everywhere?
That would be incredible, to just soak up all that knowledge. You know what? I think I'd go back even further. Ancient Sumer. I'd love to see those very first cities, to be there when they were figuring out writing. It'd be like seeing the start of it all, civilization.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it, right? How these events from so long ago, they still impact us now. It's like we're still trying to answer those same questions about power, innovation, the kind of world we want to live in.
That's what makes this so fascinating. We started with such a random mix, a classic history book, then a quirky YouTube video,
Yep.
an old text meant for a prince. And somehow it all connects back to these, I don't know, universal things about being human, about how powerful ideas are, how our story is always changing.
I know. It just shows that history, it's not some finished thing. It's an ongoing conversation, a journey we're all on. And who knows, maybe what we talked about today will inspire someone listening to start their own deep dive.
I hope so. That's what it's all about. So, as we wrap things up here, one last thing for you to think about. If you could step into the shoes of anyone from history just for one day, who would it be? What would you want to see through their eyes? It's something to think about, and hey, maybe it'll spark your next history adventure. Until then, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep making those connections.